GMT Games has produced some amazing games, but I have to confess, I haven't played them as much as I want to. So today, I've got my resident GMT Games expert here. He's brought all of his GMT games. Nato, thanks for joining me, and we're going to talk about my top 10 GMT games that I want to get to the table. This is Legendary Tactics.
Okay, so this is your list.
This is my list. So
interestingly, I own a lot of these games.
Yes,
so
you do.
We have a chance of getting these to the table at some point.
And my confession is, of these games, I only own one of them.
All right.
It's a little embarrassing.
That's okay. That's right. We want to get these to the table. So some of them you have played, some of them you have not.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
So part of me is embarrassed that I want to twist the GMT games away from, I think, their intended purpose. Generally, there's a lot of war games. I'm pulling away from that and going a slightly different direction.
Okay. Well,
so
let's hear the list.
Let's begin. Okay, so the first one is one that I know you and Cax have played quite a bit.
We have played this one a lot, yes.
And this game is 1960, The Making of a President. So this is a good two-player game.
Yes, it is only two-player.
That's right. Jason Matthews, who also brought Twilight Struggle.
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit about why you think this is a good or bad pick for me.
Well, I think that as a game, it is quite straightforward in general. Like it's an easier. It's very similar in some ways to a game like Twilight Struggle, but it's much more straightforward in its rules, and everyone's familiar with elections in general, and so it's big board, as you can see.
Yeah.
But it's just a really fun, reasonably light kind of introduction to what we would call card-driven games, where you have events to manage and hands to figure out, mitigate, and you're spending campaign points in this game, operations in other similar games, and it's a fun game. It feels like an election. The events are all they've got a lot of interesting events, and I think it's just a fun game. And I've played this with some gamers who are very light gamers, and they have had a lot of fun with it. So it's a really nice introduction to this type of game.
Can I call this Twilight Struggle light?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I didn't think you would let me away with that.
No, I think it has enough in common with Twilight Struggle that if you are the type of gamer that would find Twilight Struggle heavy, I think this one is a great introduction, and maybe you can then, after that, you can step up to something like full-on Twilight Struggle. So
very cool. So that's 1960, The Making of a President.
Okay.
Let's go on to my number 2. Hopefully they can't see my list here ahead of time, but if they have really sharp eyes, they might be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
So my next one is one that I have played minimally. Go ahead and pull it over. So this is Versailles 1919.
Yes.
And the reason I got into this one originally was because I played another game, which we'll talk about next, actually.
Yes.
But
another game of the Great Statesman series.
Yes.
It doesn't give
foreshadowing.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're a master. and I was told that this was a lighter, more palatable version of that. Do you think that's an apt description?
I would say it's yes and no. It is a different game. This one also, I love the map board. Well, if you call it a map board. But this one is a very different game to the one you're speaking to. These boards are always crazy. I love the mounted boards and all the
size of this thing.
Yeah, it's pretty gigantic. But it is in many ways its own game. It's loosely linked to the other games in the Great Statesman series. But to be honest, the other games in the Great Statesman series are really their own game too. Like there's a tenuous kind of negotiation aspect to the game that kind of ties them together.
Yes.
But they're their own thing, and each of them are kind of their own deal. But this is the easiest one of the three to learn and to get to the table, I think.
Any value historically in this game, or are you simply playing a mechanism with faces you'll recognize?
I've heard criticism that it isn't quite as historical or maybe deeply strategic as it could be.
Okay.
But I think as a design, it's very elegant.
This comes from Mark Herman, right?
Yes,
So he's a mastermind.
But as I said, it's an elegant design. I think it accomplishes what it sets out to do very well, and I think it's a fun game. And certainly, if you're if you have a lighter I know you love your lighter games.
Yes. So just to be clear, this guy, he loves the heavy, huge rule books. Like, it would take up this entire table in the next room as well. In-depth games, tons of rules, flowcharts, all of that. I like an easy to learn with lots of strategic depth game.
Yes.
And I would say you're more tactical. You like games with some movement and some grid and some hexes, whereas I tend to enjoy grand strategy or strategic games, which I think...
Yes.
I don't know if this would be a strategic game.
And narrative, too. I think
and narrative, yes. Narrative. And I love me a good narrative game.
This handles a lot of the kind of the issues of the day and everything in a very intriguing way. So
very cool.
We're going to do a playthrough at some point with that one.
So we absolutely have to jump right now to the next one, which is in the same series.
In the same series. This is the one we were spoiling before. Churchill.
Now, interestingly, this game is higher on my list of games I want to play, even though I don't enjoy half of the game.
I know, yes. So you have to explain that.
Yes, so
I can open this up.
There's two halves to this game, and the half that I love, when we get Cax in here and Nate and myself, it's a perfect 3-player game. You get negotiations, you get issues that you nominate, put them into the center, and it's a tug of war. Except it's a tug of war with allies, and that's what I love. Is that it's you're trying to convince them like, hey, we're working together here, and this is something we should be helping each other out with. But meanwhile, you're all struggling to try to win it yourselves.
Yes.
So
this board is quite big as well.
So I'm glad we can show this board because I love this half of the game.
Yes.
And you actually put together a tool to help with this side. And basically when Nato gets to this part, I tune out and I just say, just tell me what happened.
Yes.
And he figures out, we switch these cubes and this happened.
Which
and we roll the
advance
dice
and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So what do you think in terms of this game in relative to the other games that I've chosen?
Well, yeah, this is definitely the heaviest game of the titles you've listed so far. Just in terms of rules, overhead, and you can see there's lots of text.
Yes.
It's very text-based. This is, the whole wheeling and dealing. And usually what ends up happening is everything is we start out with good intentions and then we get all petty and we start...
Yes.
And I think that's
Cax usually, one of us makes him mad and then he goes all out on that person.
Yes, and then we try and balance it out or whatever. Anyway, it gets messy. So we don't actually typically, whenever we've played this game, we don't actually typically do very well at it.
Yes.
Because we actually will lose the war because we're too busy bickering. But it is fun.
And Cax and I don't care about this. It's like, we didn't get into Germany. Who cares? I won the strategic materials and hosed both of you.
Yes, exactly.
It makes no sense. But it's fun.
Yeah, it is a fun game. And as I said, it's the heaviest one of the titles you've listed here so far.
Yes.
But for those willing to give it a shot and to tackle the game, I think once you're into it, I think it's fine.
It is. Yeah, it's great. You almost need a rules guy like Nate here because it is a bit heavy on the uptake. But let's move to the number 7. So this is one that we tried online one time. I don't own a copy. You don't own a copy.
Actually, this is maybe using Vassal as... I think that was how we played. I don't remember exactly. I think it was Vassal we used.
Might have been Vassal.
And it was the first time I think we attempted to play a board game online, or one of our very early attempts to do that.
The game is Dominant Species. And there's also a dominant species, Marine, is now, that's probably 4 or 5 years old.
Which is very highly regarded.
It's great, yeah. And so I'm going for this one. And this is where actually, if you could join in the conversation here, down in the comments, let me know if you think this is a good pick, now that you get a sense of the other types of games I'm into. Do you want to play this one too?
Yeah, I'd love to. Love to give it a try. Yeah,
so it's about dinosaurs evolving?
No, it's not. No? It's not dinosaurs, but you have your insects and your spiders and stuff. And there's some different terrain, and you're trying to control. It's like an area control game from what I remember, and you get benefits from controlling territory. And there's an impending ice age, though, and that's kind of the timer on the game. So, but you're just trying to. It's kind of neat, as just trying to essentially become the dominant species in that particular region, and it's really neat.
It's a little off GMT meta. I mean, that theme is very different from the rest of the themes of the game. So, number 6, also another game I don't own. Do you own this one? The game is Commands and Colors Ancients.
I own the digital edition, which was on Steam, which is no longer on Steam. I've heard it's quite buggy in terms of the way the game plays. I haven't had any problems with it. I've actually done some coverage of this particular version on the channel, and I've actually found it a decent challenge. As far as the game goes, it's honestly not one of my favorites. It's interesting though, because you have the different types of troops. You have the bowmen and the foot soldiers and sometimes elephants and all these ancient creatures and so forth that they used in battle, cavalry and so forth. And so what they would do is you have your armies and you kind of essentially fight each other, and each unit will have a different way of engaging the enemy. And it's interesting. I can see why people like it. It's not my favorite though, in all honesty. But I've only played the digital version,
right.
So that's all.
So I used to really enjoy the game Rome Total War. I used to play with Cax and a little bit with you.
Yeah.
And so to me, it feels like it might be the board game version of that.
A little bit, maybe, yeah.
And I've just heard. I just want to play it based on reputation alone.
Yes.
So great. Let's move on. So now we're getting into my top 5. These are the games that I've already had a little taste of, and I've all but one, and I've really, really liked what I've seen, and I want to see more. So, number 5, this is Battle Line. Now, originally, I really wanted this to be my top game.
Yeah.
But as I looked at the other games, it felt like there wasn't as much depth here.
Yeah.
But this game is so much fun. I every time I play it, this is a game from Reiner Knizia, and if you like poker and you basically have a battle formation where there's different battles going on, and you're playing different poker hands in order to try to win that battle, but it's strategic in the sense that there's bonus cards you can be drawing, or you can be drawing the cards to make your poker hand, and as soon as you sway 3, it's 5 overall, 5 battles, or 3 directly beside each other, then you win the battle. And so there's this push-pull, and you're trying to block the other person. And I just love the game, and it's so simple.
So simple, and
but so strategic.
Yeah, it's fun. And you've got different
game.
ability cards and different leaders you can play. All this stuff. There's some variation to it. It's quite. But look at the box. It's so
cheap. There's nothing to it.
There's a deck of cards. You got a few tokens here to mark the different battlegrounds. I wouldn't say it's so much poker. It's a little bit more like, say, Rummy.
Oh, okay.
In some ways, but it really, it isn't. But there's, sometimes you're concerned about the different colors and of the suits and the, so it plays a little bit like that, in that you have runs or 3 of a kind or whatever.
They call it formation. So you've got like 3 of a kind and runs, and to me it was a nice, easy to learn game, and everyone I've played this with has loved it. Yeah. So I just want to, and this is one I've played quite a bit, and I want to play more. So fantastic game. Let's go to number 4. So this is one that you and Cax have played on the channel.
We featured this not too long ago. Last time we got together.
Bit of a mouthful. Twilight Struggle Red Sea Conflict in the Horn of Africa.
You got it.
10 words. And this also comes from Jason Matthews.
Yes.
And this is a lunchbox game, which seems like it's sort of a light version. Maybe this is Twilight Struggle Light as well.
This is more officially Twilight Struggle Light. It's actually designed to be that on-ramp to Twilight Struggle.
2 turns of Twilight Struggle.
So you only play 2 turns of Twilight Struggle, but other than that, it's exactly the gameplay and everything is all the same, or very similar. There's a few things that make it unique. For example, the strategic sea lanes and a couple of other aspects. But really, this here is just the guide on how to play. The actual board is just this tiny space. And
I love that. I love that it's so concentrated. It's a knife fight in a phone booth.
It is.
Whereas to me, the full Twilight Struggle is a little bit sprawling.
Yes.
So
if you want to introduce Twilight Struggle to a friend, this is a great option. It's, again, very easy to learn, but the rules are the same as Twilight Struggle. So once you've played this a couple times and you want to graduate, even more than 1960, this one will be much more direct route to the full game of Twilight Struggle, which obviously is much more epic in scope.
Thank you. Yes. Now, I'm going to make a last-minute flip on my 2 and 3 because I just decided that I prefer the number 2, so I'm going to actually go this way first.
Go for it.
So this is a game you introduced me to.
Yeah.
Space Empires 4X. I laughed at you because it felt like Space Empires, the spreadsheet game.
Yes.
And
I've heard people comment. They've nicknamed it Spreadsheet, the game, because there is a little bit of bookkeeping involved.
And the map is terrible. Like, it's just, here's a big empty hexagon of space.
Yes.
And there's some colors around them. And yet, when we played it, and again, like, it's one of these ones, like, look at all these tokens. Yes. Piles of tokens. I think you got them organized or you'd be killing me here.
Yes.
And so to me, immediately, I'm looking at this game going, I don't like the aesthetic.
Yes.
And we played it, and it completely changed my mind because it was fun. I'm feeling a little bit of Twilight Imperium. I'm feeling a little bit of Eclipse.
Yes.
It's got that engine you're building. You have choice in the game. It's a 4X game. So explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate.
Yes.
And so I love that you can take different paths to win that way. And what are your feelings? Do you like this one too?
I really like this one actually, and I have one of the expansions, Close Encounters, and there's another expansion which currently is out of print, and another one on the way.
Nice.
So
that's awesome.
There's a lot of game in here, and not only because the base game is so sprawling, but because there's different scenarios, and then you add in the expansions, and it's really a big game, but without a lot of rules overhead.
Yeah.
It's something that's quite relatively easy to learn. I mean, I've sat down and taught a group to play it, and they picked it up, more or less, especially if you have any video game background and played any sort of those games where you're was it Sins of a Solar Empire or whatever, that game, or any of those type of games where you're you start out on one planet or something like that and you expand to others. It feels like that type of game, but in cardboard form.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now the reason I switch here, let's get this one up. People can see it too. There you go.
Yes.
Enjoy there. You can enjoy the stack here. Now the reason I switched to this one is because we played this last time you were here, and I had a ton of fun.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. I think it was fun because we had Cax playing too.
Yes.
Let's slap that one down. This is Apocalypse Road.
Yes.
And a game that's been getting a ton of attention this year is Heat Pedal to the Metal.
Yes.
And I haven't played that game, but I feel like I want to say that this is going to compete with that one, because it's not just a race; it's a gun fest and a bump fest. You're like you've got pole position, but there's different maneuvers you can pull. And if you want to play Mad Max, the race, this kind of feels like that.
Yeah. Just it's a race, but you can blow up your opponents.
That's right. Yeah,
and it's simple. It flows really well. I was a bit concerned early on that the mechanics would be tough for whatever reason, but
we learned it on camera, and it was.
It's really straightforward, awesome. And this is one again that is simple enough. You can play with kids, you can play with lighter gamers, and they will have a blast. Even though it looks kind of intimidating, when you open it up, and the rule book is not small and got all these counters here.
This is a bit of a turnoff.
But and the rule book is not short. It's not long, but there's again typical. Dense text, that sort of thing.
It's not a game that will immediately catch your interest as one. I mean, the map looks really nice.
Yes.
And you look at this and you're like, oh, they could have done a lot better on the cars. But you could change those out yourself.
You could change those out, yeah. Absolutely.
That's Apocalypse Road.
Yes.
Cool game. And that brings us to our number one. By the way, if you've gotten this far in the video and you haven't liked or subscribed yet, we always appreciate it if you support us, and that's one way that you can do that. Yeah. So please.
And another way is to become a member. If you enjoy the content, that's another way you can support us.
To get our extra secret content.
Yes, exactly.
For sure. So our number one game is one that this
Your number one game.
My number, of course, yes. I would guess this might be your number one too, though. Yes. I'm gonna ask.
Actually, I'm very interested to table this one with you.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So the game, to let you in, is Mr. President. This one is we're currently cooking up some content on it, but this one's coming out soon.
Yes.
And it is and I want to go back to the original game. The list is a nice sandwich here. 1960, The Making of a President. We talked about that's you get elected as a president, and something we've talked about is that wouldn't it be cool to experience what it's like once you're elected and to play that narrative out? And this is an expansive, immersive game where you get 35 odd decisions and you get to be the president and deal with all the problems the president deals with. So what's your experience of this game so far?
So far, I mean, I've sunk a fair number of hours into this, even though I've yet to game out my first term as president. And it's really everything that I was hoping it would be, which is great because it's always great when a game lives up to its expectations. I think it tells a great story. It's somewhat strategic, but it's more about telling a story, and that's why I think you would like it, because it's all the stuff that happens to you and how you handle it or how you attempt to handle it, and you know, things spin out of control and there's a scandal, and there's a lot of story there. It's something, because every every game you're going to have different event cards, you're going to have different roles. It is a completely different game each time. I cannot see how anyone would ever run out of game in that particular thing.
Can you pass that one over again?
Yep.
Something that you're probably noticing with all of these, including Apocalypse Road, including Mr. President, is that I really, really heavily favor theme. Whether it's I'm a space pirate or I'm running a country, you know, Stalin or whoever running whatever and making those decisions, and all of it. Maybe not Battle Line so much, but that's just a fun game. And so for me, I love that story. So tell me what you like about GMT Games, and if you haven't tried any of these, I mean, I wonder what your starting point would be. What is there a game you would recommend people start with?
Well, Battle Line is a great, 1960, Battle Line, Apocalypse Road. Those are three ones that I would easily start with. You can work your way up to Space Empires and Churchill and so forth.
And we'll finish the video with you. If there's one game either in my top 10 or off of my top 10 that you want to get to the table by GMT, what game is it?
I recently just had a chance to pick up Paths of Glory, which is a game that puts you in command of one of the countries in World War I. And it's an older game. It's from 1999, so it's been around a while. And so the copy I picked up is the 6th printing of it, and the deluxe edition. So
we should have brought that.
Yeah,
I wanted to show them.
Oh, wait a sec. What's that?
Oh, nice. That's awesome. So tell me about this.
Okay, so this is World War I. Recreated. You have some cards. It's got a bit of similarity to later games like Twilight Struggle, and lots of counters and a big map of the board, which will take some digging to get to. But it's just there's not that many games about World War I out there, and so
you're going to have to play with Cax. I don't want to play this with you.
Absolutely. We're going to see if we can do some playthrough of this. But I just got this used just last week, so I'm really excited to break it out.
Nato,
to say that.
I really appreciate you and your expertise here. You certainly know a lot about these games more than I do. So, so remember to get out there,
get gaming,
and be legendary.